What's up, guys? Doomwake here. Welcome to another edition of the Modern Metagame, your weekly resource for the events that happened over the past weekend on Magic Online and, when applicable, paper as well. This is kind of the pre-Vegas show. So for those of you who don't know, MTG Las Vegas is happening this weekend. It's actually this Friday and Saturday. I will be in attendance, which means for the channel itself, I probably won't be able to do any uploads. I'm leaving for Vegas on Wednesday, and I'm coming back the following Monday, but it doesn't really count because I'm not going to get until like super duper late Monday, so I probably won't have, I'll do a video tomorrow and potentially a video Wednesday morning, maybe with some gameplay, testing leading up to Vegas, but I won't really have much after that up until the following Tuesday. But there were a couple events that happened this past weekend, and I kind of wanted to go over those events and maybe, a little bit about maybe what I expect in Vegas and so on and so forth. We only have two events here, so the events that happened this past weekend were the typical Sunday Modern Challenge, and on Saturday there wasn't a regular Modern Challenge because they replaced it with the Showcase Challenge. Now, the Magic Online Championships has sort of like different events that feed into each other. The Showcase Challenge is kind of like the stepping stone to get into the MOX Finals, which then qualifies you for the championships. So they're a little bit more higher profile events because, they're people, there's a lot more at stake for those events than your traditional weekend challenges. So, there's a lot more better players. The metagame's a little more saturated with better decks and so on and so forth. So that might be a good event to take a look at to see what the metagame's shaping up in. There was some stuff that happened this past weekend, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start with the Saturday Showcase Challenge. And in first place, we have Bob49 with Goblin Charbelcher. Little bit surprised to see Goblin Charbelcher take down the event, although I will say that Bob49 is an absolute master of the archetype, another one of those archetype specialists. If you're familiar with the Belcher Discord, I'm sure you've seen their name around quite a few times. As far as specifics of the list, I'm not going to go into detail too much because personally I don't know a ton about the Belcher deck. I have tried it for myself once or twice. The one things that I'll notice here that look a little bit different from maybe certain previous lists that I've seen. 4 copies of Pact of Negation. I think Sodek was only playing 1 in the main deck, and then the second Reforge the Soul along with the Pyromancer Ascension. Typically I've seen that in the sideboard, so I'm not sure which matchups get better with main decking it versus not main decking it. And then sideboard, I think most of this stuff I've seen before. I know Fury's a really, really nice addition to this archetype, allowing you to set up some what's that card called? The Recross the Paths. Setting up some recross piles that involve furying, multiple hate creatures, and things of that nature. So definitely a force to be reckoned with, and as the format shifts more towards fair decks like 4-color, Yorion, and Kahira decks, and as those piles start to try to beat each other, they start cutting on cards that are traditionally good against combo, like less Force of Negations because you don't want a Force of Negation in a attrition-based mirror. So as people cut cards that are good against combo, well, combo in turn gets a little bit better, and, on top of the fact that Bob's an absolute master of the archetype, not that surprised to see them take it down here. One thing I am a little surprised to see in second place here is Merfolk. If I told you at the beginning of this video that the finals of the Showcase Challenge was going to be Merfolk versus Belcher, would you believe me? I bet you wouldn't. I'm kind of surprised to see Merfolk doing so well. Personally, I play a lot of decks that have Fury in it, and every time you cast Fury against Merfolk, it kind of feels like you're cheating. I will say that there's 4 copies of Subtlety here to help kind of alleviate that a little bit. It's interesting that there's 4 Archmage's Charms too. Usually you see Spreading Seas, maybe some counter spells, Force of Negations, but they're choosing to go with 4 Archmage's Charm, which I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning was behind that. I will note here, I like the 18 lands, so obviously, if you're playing Charm, you probably have to cut Mutavault, which makes sense. But 18 lands and 4 Glasspool Mimics. Big fan of that, because frequently with Merfolk, you have mana issues, whether it's flooding or getting mana screwed. But Glasspool Mimic is a nice way to tie the room together, because it's a land we need to land, it's a spell we need to spell, and it's also makes taking up Vial to 3 a little bit less awkward. As far as the sideboard is concerned, there's Attempted by the Auric, which is kind of a spicy one, and 4 Thieving Skydivers, which I assume is for the Hammer Time matchup, which is kind of cool. That's some new technology. So I am very surprised to see Merfolk in the finals, I'm not going to lie, because I don't know how its matchup is against all these 4-color decks, but it, if you're into the tribal sort of stuff, maybe it's time to bust out the Master of the Pearl Tridents. At third place, we got QB Turtle 15. I'm not surprised to see Blue-White Control in the top 8. I am surprised to see QB Turtle, because every time I've ever played them on Magic Online, they've only played Burn, so very surprising to see them play a Blue-White Control deck. A lot of stuff that I've been, that we've talked about in the past. I love Chalice the Void main deck. I am a big fan of all these Planeswalkers. The 2 Teferi 1 Jace, I think that's pretty good. Like 2 Shark Typhoon, less Spreading Seas than typical. I'm trying to think of what we added to make room for. Oh, those are the Chalices, yeah, because I've seen lists that have had 4 Seas, no Chalice main deck, but I do kind of like Chalice the Void main deck. Maybe not the best in a Merfolk Belcher metagame, but is pretty good against DRC and all those kinds of stuff. So third place, Blue-White Control. Fourth place, we got another archetype specialist here, Punt Then Wine, who I believe is close to, if not at the top of the leaderboard right now for the trophy race on Magic Online, playing Amulet. I know that he is a big fan of playing Karn, which definitely makes a lot of sense. Gives the deck a little bit more of a different angle of attack, gives you some more additional threats, so I do kind of like that. 3 Azusa, 4 Dryad. I think that, because he's not playing Explore, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense if you're going to cut Explore. Love the Grazers, mana base, everything seems pretty traditional there. And then in the sideboard, okay, so I think it was Fran who was really in on Tireless Tracker. I guess Punt is not quite in on Tireless Trackers as much, but yeah, I like a lot of what's going on here. I love the Karn plan. I kind of like shoving on Azusa Dryad too, because that's just part of your best draws, right? Just like maximize maximize your nut draws, which makes a lot of sense. So, fourth place, Amulet Specialist himself, Punt Then Wine, playing Amulet. Fifth place, we got Burnastores with the Kahira 4-color. This is the Nassif deck. Yeah, it doesn't look like we changed too much here. 2 Verdict, 3 Iteration, a bajillion Planeswalkers, Cyborg Kahira, Chalices, Force of Vigors. Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just noting that I believe this might be the exact same list as Nassif. So, fifth place, Kahira 4-color, Planeswalker Control. Sixth place, we got some traditional Hammer Time. This is the Bobless version. We got some couple Smiths and a Giver of Runes. 2 main deck Thoughtseizes. I think those are the flex spots. I want to say I've seen like 4 Smith, 1 Thoughtseize. I've seen 3 Bob, 2 Thoughtseize. I think I've seen like no Thoughtseizes and maybe an extra equipment too. Those are kind of like the 5 flex spots. Everything else is pretty set in stone, I believe. And then you see the Knight of Malice is here for the blue-white matchup. 2nd Cathar Commando, which is kind of interesting for the mirror match and that kind of stuff. 2 Void Mirror, really good against any deck playing Fury Solitude, and also quite good if the Rhinos decks are going to start adapting the 4th color as well, if that's going to be a common thing moving forward. Definitely want to look towards Void Mirror, because not only does it stop Cascade, but it also stops Fury and Solitude. So, 6th place, Hammer Time. 7th place, we got some Jund Saga. I don't believe there's too much to discuss here. All these lists kind of look the same, but this is kind of where I wanted to be with the 4 Run and 6s. Flex Thoughts being Abrupt Decay, Kolaghan's Command, 2 Bolt, 2 Thoughtseize. I like the map. I like the main deck Spellbomb. 12 threats, obviously. And then sideboard, Necromentia in the sideboard is one that I haven't seen before. I don't know if I like that card. I just kind of don't like that card in a general sense, especially in a deck like this. I'm trying to think of what you want it against. I guess this thing hits any land, right? Or hits non-basics. Let me just double check. I believe. Okay, so I guess you can hit Tron with it. It's good against Belcher. It's okay against Rhinos, but the Rhinos decks are becoming more threat dense, so I'm not a fan of it there. I think that you might be able to find a better sideboard card than Necromentia, but everything else I am a big fan of in this deck list. Then 8th place, more of the same, little bit of Jund Saga, a little bit a couple small differences here. 1 Bolt, 2 Decay, 3 Thoughtseize. And then the sideboard has Engineered Explosives, where the previous list had the Necromentias. I don't mind that, although I will say Engineered Explosives not as good. It's not as versatile as Necromentia, but it is a much more efficient, and it's just a better card. So depending on what you're using Necromentia for, you might want to consider a different sideboard card. Potentially Explosives, maybe something different, but Golgari Charm here, which is kind of interesting. But I do quite like that card a bit. It does kill Urza Saga and has some nice utility there. So that's the Saturday Showcase Challenge, again, won by Belcher, Merfolk in the finals. Let's take a look at Sunday's challenge. So for the Sunday challenge, first place, no, I did not just copy-paste the same deck list. It is won by Charbelcher again. So Goblin Charbelcher won back-to-back events this weekend. It's one of those things kind of similar to like Dredge in the past, where people don't show up with enough hate, and then it takes down an entire tournament, sometimes two, and then people show up with the hate next week. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend playing with Charbelcher in the next couple of weeks, because I'm sure the hate is going to be magnified times 1,000. But this is the one weekend that it had to, kind of its breakout weekend. As far as specifics about the list, we still see the main deck Pyromancer Ascension. We see only 2 Pact of Negation as far as 4. I will note the name ZYX Cherry. I've played against this person a couple times on Magic Online. They seem very proficient with the deck. I believe that they are a Belcher specialist as well. So 2 Belcher specialists winning both events. So, very, very kind of rewarding to see the hard work pay off. But as far as, again, going over the rest of the numbers, 3 Ironcrag Feet, the 1 Treachery, 3 Strike It Rich. I think most of this stuff is the same with the exception of the pack numbers and maybe a couple of the sideboard cards. But for the most part, very, very similar list. And this was Belcher's weekend to shine. Second place here, we got a little bit of a blast from the past. This is Elementals, a deck that I haven't seen in quite some time, which has mostly been replaced with the 4-color Yorion and other Kahira control decks. Interesting to see Elementals here. A lot of what we've seen in the past with Canister, who was a big proponent of this deck, I think about a month back, with kind of a little bit more spell heavy with Teferi, Lightning Bolt, Prismatic Ending, and Utopia Sprawl alongside Ephemerate, and not like going all in on the creature package with like more Flamekin Harbingers and Smoke Braiders and Lightning Elementals, Vesper Larks, that kind of stuff. So more of like taking a more controlling role and then, having the Elemental package alongside that, which is kind of cool. I don't really know what the advantages of playing Elementals over the 4-color control deck are, especially, you can kind of sidestep the creature removal with the 4-color control deck because you just have a pile of Planeswalkers as opposed to having, Risen Reefs and more Elementals. So I feel like personally I'd prefer to be on the 4-color control side of things, but maybe if you expect more creature-based matchups, it might be a little bit better to play Elementals because you have 4 Fury, 4 Solitude compared to the control version, which doesn't have the full 8 copies of those. So that might be worth considering, but yeah, really solid deck, and, again, a little surprising to see it over 4-color control, but second place, Elementals. And in third place, we got some more combo for you. We got Glimpse of Tomorrow. I've played this deck on the channel, I think, once or twice before. It's a lot of fun, and, I'm not really sure. As far as Cascade decks are concerned, I think you might still be a little bit better off playing Living End because it's just more consistent and more powerful. But, if you're worried about a pile of graveyard hate, I could certainly see reasons you don't want to play Living End. My one issue that I have with this particular Glimpse of Tomorrow deck is I've seen it go, like, quote-unquote, go off a couple of times, and it's not the most consistent deck. If people are pressuring you and they're forcing you to go for a smaller Glimpse of Tomorrow than you might normally want to go for, this deck certainly has a fail rate, so to keep that in mind. But if you're into the combo sort of thing, maybe you don't want to play Living End, maybe you don't want to play Belcher, here's some more combo for you. And as we move towards, more, again, as I was saying before, more towards the 4-color mirrors, and as they start to get more inbred, then, combo certainly takes a step forward in that space. All right, fourth place, we got Crusherbot BG, Hammer Time. This is the person who refuses to put Lurrus in their sideboard. They've had quite a bit of success with the Lurrus-less version with the Sword of Fire and Ice and the Metal Cyst. Personally, again, if I was to play Hammer Time, again, I don't play a ton of Hammer Time, I would probably prefer to register Lurrus because Lurrus is broken. But I'm not gonna say that this person has not had a ton of success because they have, but if I think personally, if I were to play that deck, I'd rather have Lurrus. But yeah, we've sort of moved the flex spots with additional 3-mana equipment and kind of trimmed down the fat a little bit, as it were. And then sideboard, very interesting here. 3 defense grid, 3 Anthonyze, 3 silence, kind of a staple for this particular person who does play a ton of Hammer Time, and they have been very successful with this deck before. But yeah, 4th place, the Lurrus-less Hammer Time. 5th place, we got some Murktide as far as the flex spot. It's kind of weird that there's only 3 copies of Murktide Region. I just realized that. I don't know if I like that much. Not gonna lie. We got a Jace, 2 Charms, 3 Bolts, a Spell Snare, and Explosives. So, most of that, I'm not huge on the Spell Snare. I probably would play the 4th Murktide. I still kind of like a Spell Pierce main deck. I do like the Borrower. I don't hate the Jace. And then as far as the sideboard is concerned, like the Blood Moons, like the 2nd Jace, like most of what the sideboard has, just not the biggest fan about only playing 3 Murktides. So, 5th place, Blue-Red Murktide. Apparently this was just Belcher's weekend to shine. 6th place, we have yet another copy of Goblin Charbelcher. This version only has 2 main deck Blood Moons and a 3rd in the sideboard. I think if you're going to play Belcher, part of the reason to play Belcher, it is just the best Blood Moon deck because you can play it on turn 2. So I would personally probably recommend, looking at one of the first place lists that have 4 copies of Blood Moon, because again, that's part of the biggest draw to playing Belcher is the fact that you're a Blood Moon deck. But everything else, most of the stuff looks relatively similar. Yeah, not a ton to discuss there. But 6th place, more Belcher. All right, 7th place. I don't exactly know what to call this. So we are an Omnath Blood Crypt deck. So this is kind of like 5-color mid-range. Teferi, Renin 6, Omnath, Kolaghan's Command, Kaya's Guile, Fatal Push. There's a lot going on here in 7th place. I guess we're just taking the 4-color Omnath deck and adding black for Fatal Push, Kaya's Guile, Kolaghan's Command? I don't know if I like that. I mean, it's certainly interesting. Again, as we talked about earlier, if you want to make your matchup better against the fair decks, there's certainly ways to do that, and this is one of them. I'm sure that addition of Kaya's Guile and Kolaghan's Command gives you a lot of edge in the fair matchups, but you sacrifice a lot in terms of the mana base. You make your deck a little bit worse against Blood Moon, so that's definitely something to consider. But also a 5-color Counterspell Archmage's Charm deck I'm not huge on. I mean, this deck certainly has some good stuff going on, but I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze when it comes to this 5-color stuff. But yeah, 7th place we got the, I guess we'll call it 5-color Omnath. In 8th place, to round out the top 8, we got Yurio on, this looks like a 4-color Yorion deck. This is very similar to the Canister stuff. There's no Eternal Witness, no Time Warp. We still got all the Planeswalkers, Abundant Growth, Spreading Seas, only 2 Ephemerates to go alongside Fury Solitude. So we're kind of shaving on Ephemerate and the Witness package, and we're adding in Ragavan. Interesting decision. I don't know if I like that as much because Ragavan is a little bit more sketchy when you add 20 more cards because you just have it less often in the first couple of turns. So it might be better off to play the Witness package because you give yourself a little bit more late game, and that's kind of what you would rather have when you're adding the extra 20 cards to your deck. Also, setting up Witness loops with Ephemerate is pretty sick with Yorion. So I think, they have some Memory Deluges too. I feel like I'd prefer to be playing the Witness stuff, but I can definitely see, Ragavan's a powerful card. I'm not gonna argue that. Sideboard, we got a Chandra, a Kozilek, 3 Chalices, 4 Forces. I like most of what's going on the sideboard, but yeah, just worth noting here that we have 4-color with 4 Ragavan in 8th place. Now that we've looked at the top 8 of both of these events, let's see if we can find some spice somewhere outside of the top 8. All right, so for the Saturday Showcase Challenge, the deck list was so long and there were so many one-ofs that I couldn't actually fit the name, but it was Contra Ego in 22nd place. Again, I'll put all the deck lists in the description down below. We have a Urza Yorion. This is Yorion. Yeah, this is Yorion. Urza Yorion Stoneblade deck. So we have a lot of the Urza elements here: Esper, Sentinel, Ingenious Smith, Urza, a bunch of artifacts, one mana cards to go get with Saga. We're a Stoneforge Mystic deck, which do we have a Batterskull, right? So no, we have a Kaldra. and a Sword of Fire and Ice. Okay, no Batter Skull, but we have Cauldron, Sword of Fire and Ice. The nice thing that Stoneforge also does is help set up the Thopter combo, because you have one sword of the make to go find, so that's kind of cool as well. I know Contra Ego plays a ton of these Urza, Thopter, Foundry decks, so, you know, definitely not surprised to see them... Wait, did we cut the Thopter Foundry? No, this are four of them, okay. I was looking at the deck list and I was like, wait, okay, never mind. But yeah, I know this person plays a ton of Thopter Foundry, so just something that I wanted to highlight here. If you're into that sort of stuff, maybe take the Yorion approach. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. So that is, again, 22nd place Contra Ego, Blue-White, Urza, Yorion, Thopter, Blade. And from the Sunday challenge, we're going to take a look at 22nd place here. This is our first taste of Innistrad Crimson Vow. And we got some Chandra Dress to Kills alongside a Ponza package. So this is a lot of traditional elements that you'll see from Ponza here. One thing worth noting, there was actually a few copies of Ponza littered throughout this top 32, so if you're into the Ponza sort of stuff, make sure to check out the deck list down below. But for this is the one I wanted to highlight here, mostly because it had a new card in it. Chandra Dress to Kill is a nice addition to Ponza. We have Arbor Elf Utopia Sprawl, which I'm sure you've seen before. Bloodbraid Elf, Bone Crusher Giant Fury, Ragavan, another very awesome addition to Ponza. There's not a ton of fancy stuff going on here. 1 Clothis, 3 Pyromancer, a Smashing is the 20th land, which makes sense. But I just wanted to highlight Ponza as an archetype because, again, I think there were 3 copies littered throughout this top 32. And that's a lot because people have not really been super high on the Ponza decks as of late. But maybe Chandra Dress to Kill is maybe something that this deck wanted access to. Maybe it's maybe something that revitalizes the archetype. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, just something I wanted to note here, that there was not only this particular Ponza deck, but again, 3 copies in the top 32. Now let's take a look at maybe more of a bigger picture with all the top 8s combined. Alright, so this is kind of where we're at, and it's sort of a bigger picture kind of thing. This is to sort of round everything out. This is what we look like with both top 8s combined. So again, both events won by Charbelcher, a little bit surprising, along with another copy of Belcher in the top 8 on Sunday. We had a couple copies of Jund Saga, but for the most part, like remember last week where we saw one of the top 8s had 4 copies of 4-color Omnath, and the previous week there was 3 or 4 copies of Blue-White Control. Other than a couple copies of Belcher combined bits, well, Belcher winning both is obviously a statement. But other than that, there is a lot of diversity. I mean, you look at these top 8s, you see Mono Blue Merfolk, Amulet Titan, you see Glimpse, you see 4-color Elementals, and the 5-color Omnath deck. There's a lot of brewing going on in Modern right now. So maybe, you know, again, it's a nice refresher from the previous weeks that we've had that may have been dominated by one specific deck. So it's really nice to sort of take a break from that. Maybe, I mean, there's still a lot of companions. Like if you look at the top 8 on Sunday, or excuse me, Saturday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the top 8 on Saturday, only 2, is that right? Yeah, because the Hammer deck was, yep, so only 2 on Saturday. But for the Showcase 6 is, you know, still a lot. But yeah, for the most part, Modern's in a great spot right now. A lot of brewing. Maybe it's time for Combo to come back. But again, I would be a little bit weary of playing Combo in the next week or so because of how well it did this past weekend. People are going to be prepared for it. But as far as our pre-Vegas show, that's all I got for y'all today. Again, I will be participating in Vegas. I'm going to be playing Yorion Rhinos, so potentially there might be another Yorion Rhinos video coming out the next couple of days as we prepare for Vegas. But I hope to see you there if you are going. And again, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Modern Metagame. I'll see you all next week.